Many years of scientific observations have proven that our climate, and especially the temperature, is constantly changing. Between 1990 and 2010, 12 hottest years were noted. The factors that influence this increase in temperature can be divided into two groups: natural, which are caused by nature, and anthropogenic, the ones that are caused by humans and their impact on the environment. The first natural factor is solar constant, which equals at about 1,370 watts per square meter. This is the measure of energy which is transferred by solar radiation in the unit of time through the unitary area, and which would be incident on a plane perpendicular to the rays at the distance from the Sun to the Earth. The so-called constant is not exactly a constant because it has been changing in approximately 11-year-old cycle connected to the Sun activities. These changes equal at about 0.1% of the total radiation, which causes the fluctuation of temperature by about 0.1 Kelvin degrees. The second natural factor which causes the temperature fluctuations is volcanic activity. The smaller activity, the higher temperature. When the volcano erupts, it ejects volcanic ashes, which reflect the sunlight and thus reduce the opportunity to warm the Earth. The increase of volcanic activity in the long period of time leads to lowering the temperature, which makes it one of the main reasons for emergence of ice ages. Apart from the natural factors, we also have the anthropogenic ones. However, greenhouse gas can be ascribed to both of them because it is produced by natural sources as well as by human activity. Of course, the greenhouse effect, which is natural, is necessary for the organism to live as it provides the right climate. But because of human activity, this effect is escalated and thus damaging to the planet. Greenhouse gas has the ability to keep the solar energy in the atmosphere by absorbing it, which causes the temperature increase. The most abundant greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. The natural causes of the emission of greenhouse gases are volcano eruptions and biological activities of organisms, and the human-connected causes are burning fossil fuels, deforestation and forest degradation, production of the substances made from carbonates, agriculture, and cattle breeding. Another factor which is dependent on both natural and human-related causes is the presence of atmospheric aerosols, which are also called particulate matters. The two types of these matters, which have similar effects on our planet as greenhouse gases, are mineral dusts and soot. They are produced during coal burning, and their emission is caused by industry. The other causes are volcano eruptions, forest and peat bog fires, sandstorms, production from disintegration of the matter in the oceans, and other natural and anthropogenic reasons. Apart from direct factors, we also have the indirect ones. Clouds reflect at about 50% of solar radiation, so if there are more clouds or they are thicker, then less amount of radiation can reach the Earth. However, this doesn't mean that greenhouse gases are less important, because just like aerosols, they constantly interact with the atmosphere, and they can cause the changes in cloud covers, which leads to changes in temperature.
Natural factors have always made the Earth's climate change, but the changes were never as fast as in the past 200 years. The current global average temperature is 0.85 Celsius degrees higher than it was in the late 19th century. Each of the past 3 decades was warmer than any previous decade since record began in 1880. Year 2014 was the warmest year since the beginning of measurements. The average temperature in this year equaled about 14.6 Celsius degrees, and this result is higher by 0.5 Celsius degrees than the average from year 1992. Average of the decade was 14.5 Celsius degrees and is higher by 0.6 Celsius degrees than the period of the time from 1983 to 1992. Of course, today's situation isn't the worst in the whole history of Earth. Since the beginning of life on our planet, it was warmer in, for example, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, when the average global temperature increased by approximately 6 Celsius degrees within about 20,000 years. There are also huge glacial periods like Cryogenian, when the glaciation had the global range. The last glaciation ended about 13,000 years ago.
The epoch which we decided to describe is the Holocene. It started with the end of the last glacial period of Pleistocene and lasted until today. Despite multiple warmings and coolings during 11,700 years, the climate terms were very sustainable. These climate episodes weren't identical on the globe. Essentially, they appeared in given latitudes. With the beginning of Holocene, climate warmed in the cold temperate latitudes and a slow process of dwindling of glaciers took place. Nevertheless, this period is characterized by the returns of the colds. Last 3,500 years were the time of gradual cooling, mainly because of the Milankovitch cycles. In these years, oscillations of glaciers occurred, which were extending their reach, what caused the decrease of temperature. In the region of North Atlantic were observed cyclical sudden coolings, which recur by 1,470 plus minus 500 years. After their discoverer, they are named Bond events. The reasons of this phenomenon aren't univocal, but scientists assume that they were caused by changes in sun's radiation, reorganization of atmospheric circulations, or influence of moon cycle, which affects on the tide sizes. Bond events were registered especially in the region of North Atlantic, but they are also synchronized with the attenuation of the Asian monsoons, periods of drought on the Middle East, and transformation of the plant aggregations into North America. There are distinguished 9 Bond events, which are associated with global climate changes and rises and falls of the civilizations. During zero Bond events, in years 1400 to 1850, the Little Ice Age occurred. Glaciers extended, both European rivers and canals froze, causing famines, wars and epidemics. Sea ice around Iceland confined communication and in the end put Vikings into disappearance from Greenland. However, coolings interchanged with warmings. During medieval warming, temperature was higher by half to 1 Celsius degree than currently. Long period of coolings has been stopped by sudden warming in 20th century. Within almost 100 years, temperature reached higher measurements than 85% of periods of Holocene. Thereby, for instance, in 1991, it was possible to discover the remains of Otzi the Iceman, who froze 5,000 years ago into the glacier. Due to investigations by scientists at NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, the average global temperature on Earth has increased by about 0.8 Celsius degrees since 1880. Almost 67% of the warming has occurred since 1975, with the advance of 1500 to 2000 per decade. According to the maps, global warming doesn't mean that temperature rose everywhere simultaneously by 1 degree. Temperature in the particular period of time might rise by 5 degrees in one region and drop 2 degrees in another. Unusual cold winters can be followed by exceptionally warm summers. A 1 degree global change is significant because it takes a vast amount of heat to warm all the oceans, atmosphere and land. In the past, a 1 to 2 degree drop led the Earth into the Little Ice Age.
Thanks to scientific research during the last years, we can point out some evidence that proves the changes of climate and especially the increase of temperature. The occurrence of global warming has been determined by an array of global range parameters. The most basic measurements are the temperature records. Since the Industrial Revolution, the average global temperature has been gradually increasing. The distinction between average global temperature nowadays and in the 1880 reaches a number of about 0.8 Celsius degrees. More evidence of climate warming occurrence can be easily found by observing the changes taking place on our planet's surface. For instance, melting of the world's largest peat bog, an area stretching for 1 million square kilometers across the permafrost of western Siberia. This phenomenon radically changes the landscape of Siberia, turning it into a land of broad and shallow lakes. Furthermore, melting of sea ice located mainly in Greenland and Antarctica causes both an erosion of the land under it and sea level rising. According to Ice2Sea project carried out by over 10 countries from different continents, which aims to fight global warming, the sea level rises about 3 mm every year, and this rate is still getting higher. At the end of current century, the global sea level should reach from about 60 to even 120 centimeters higher than. However, global warming hasn't been the only factor to shape our climate. Landforms built by erosive and accumulative process of glaciers remain the testimony of glacial periods, which had a significant influence on climate thousands of years ago. Some animal species, which thanks to natural selection managed to survive times of several ice ages, form another evidence for climate change's occurrence. An example of such species might be canis, that lived in the nearby of current Los Angeles localization. Because of climate warming, they gradually started getting smaller and trimmer to readjust to new quarry and higher temperature.
On Earth has been changing since its creation at about 4.5 billion years ago. There are periods of both glaciation and extreme high temperature. The factors which cause it were completely natural, like, among others, sun, volcanic eruption, and greenhouse gas producing natural biological process. Even though there are reasons of temperature increase that are not connected with human, like growth of the solar crust, which is caused by the activity of the sun, most of them unfortunately are.
The biggest rise of temperature and the biggest Earth images come from the 20th century. The main reasons are factory activities and development of technologies. For the cost of easier life, we destroy our planet. Nowadays, coal is the main source of producing energy. We burn a lot of it in industries, but we also use it as heating in our houses and for other purposes. The product is coal burning is soot, which is one of the particulate matters that causes changes in temperature. Similar compounds are produced when we use, for example, natural gas or some other sources which can be transferred into aerosols. In fabric processes, we also produce mineral dusts, which belong to the group of these matters too and cause temperature increase. But the biggest reason why people are responsible for temperature increase is because they emit too much greenhouse gases which trap the sun's energy and stop it from leaking back into space. Because of this, the layer of the greenhouse gas is getting thicker, which is in turn making the earth warmer. As it was said before, many of these gases occur naturally, but human activity increases the amount of them in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is the greenhouse gas which is most often produced by human activities and is responsible for 64% of man-made global warming. Its amount in the atmosphere is currently 40% higher than it was before the industrialization began. Other greenhouse gases are emitted in smaller amounts, but they trap heat far more effectively than carbon dioxide and in some cases are 1,000 times stronger. Methane is responsible for 17% of man-made global warming, nitrous oxide for 6%. Fluorinated gases produce a very strong warming effect, up to 24,000 times greater than carbon dioxide. Thankfully, these are released in much smaller amounts. It can be surprising, but farming is also one of the causes of global warming. Cows and sheep produce large amounts of methane when they digest food. Also, fertilizers containing nitrogen produce nitrous oxide. One of the biggest problems is also deforestation. Trees help to regulate the climate by absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When they are cut down, the carbon stored in the trees is released into the atmosphere.
The phrase climate change is commonly known and used in order to refer to global warming or increase of temperature. One of the problems caused by temperature increase is glacier melting. However, to strike that effect, the warming has to be higher than the amount of snowfall. Once the glacier melts, sea level elevates. Consequently, land area could be flooded. If the temperature average increases about 3 degrees within a few years' time, water level will elevate about 25 meters. It attends hurricanes and storms forming. It carries danger to people living on coastlines or islands, notably coral ones which elevation is low. Only glaciers that are placed on the land affect sea level. By the Archimedean principle, the glacier, for example B. Larsen, which drifts after thawing, do not influence water level. The glaciers placed on the land are in Alps, the higher layers of Kilimanjaro, Cordilleras, and ice sheets are placed in Antarctica and Greenland. In 2002, science research proved that state of ice cap in Kilimanjaro from the beginning of 20th century to 2007 has lessened 12 times. Another example of ice surface shrinking has appeared on the Muir Glacier in North America. About 12 kilometers has been reduced. What can we do to prevent this melting? The long-standing actions which affect decreasing greenhouse gas emission are trees planting, what reduces amount of carbon dioxide in the air, conserving energy, enclosing car driving to minimum in order to decrease exhaust production that contains of carbon dioxide, steam and sulfur trioxide. The energy obtained from hard coal or brown coal is replaced with energy from hydroelectric power stations or wind farms. They all need expense, but are friendly to environment because they don't produce any of greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, mentioned solutions are not taken into account by most of the civilization. Perhaps it occurs because of certain way of thinking of average men who focuses on the here and now. One also doesn't pay attention to consequences which will appear in dozen or so years' time. What's more, the actions for environment don't carry quick results. Lack of engagement in a country and citizens' acknowledge lead to constant increase of greenhouse gases. Social factor. One of the solutions that prevents the emission of carbohydrate is planting new trees in chosen area. Nowadays, in more developed countries where government cares about environment, there are organized some events which encourage planting trees. If we want to decrease the level of pollutants, such events should spread all over the world. Besides that, there should be a law that tells about planting new trees in lieu of accessible ones. It doesn't require many abilities and it's easy to accomplish. Besides that, establishing a new plan gives us satisfaction because of doing something great to our environment. Summing up, planting isn't expensive and absorbing, but is very satisfactory and valuable for society. By planting, we make our surroundings better to live in and healthier.
Environmental factor.
Tree planting has the job to prevent the emission of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, water vapor, or nitrous oxide, so it is strictly connected to the environmental factor. By planting trees on a great scale, each country would have to be involved in that project. We would be able to lower mainly the presence of carbon dioxide, the most common greenhouse gas, which makes it also the most dangerous one. Apart from that, trees also produce oxygen, which is needed for all of us. What is more, the amount of this substance in the air is becoming smaller and smaller, so this method would give us a lot of other advantages too. The forests would also become an ecosystem for animals, which would make the potential chance of their extinction less probable.
Political factor.
Our solution could also affect some political issues. Obviously, not all the countries would be willing to agree to plant a certain amount of trees, and this could lead to some international conflicts. This is why it is extremely important for people to understand that it is a problem of the whole world, and it influences all of us. Therefore, to make the action really profitable, it is necessary to involve all the
Economic factor. Planting trees will also affect the field of economy. Afforestation of large areas requires a lot of manpower. It's almost impossible to find so many volunteers, so it would be necessary to recruit new employees. It would influence the employment structure and gross domestic product and also reduce unemployment. On the other hand, tree planting requires huge investments. Both seedlings and grounds are very expensive. What's more, when forest is once seeded, it requires cultivation and spraying, which also takes a lot of money. Another important case is that afforestation takes huge tracts of ground. These areas could be used for development of agriculture, industry and services, so you can say that planting trees in some way inhibits development of economy. Climate is influenced by a huge number of factors, for example solar constant, volcanic activity, latitude, greenhouse effect, or presence of atmospheric aerosols. Climate has always been changing, but never as fast and dynamic as in the last decades. The average temperature is getting higher year by year. The main reason is the development of technologies. The layer of greenhouse gases is getting thicker, which causes the temperature increase. Though we are searching, we can't find one proper solution for that problem. At this moment, the most important are small actions, like for example trees planting, which can be effective if sufficient number of people will take it on. That project will affect many fields, inter alia society, environment, politics and economy. What single man can do is making people aware of the problem and involving friends in protecting our planet.